Hey guys, welcome to PocketPsych podcast. This is our first ever live stream here. So thank you everyone who has tuned in, whether you're watching back the VOD or whether you're watching live. Hopefully we do have a couple of people that will be popping up in chat throughout tonight. So we'll be able to answer some questions that you guys might have. But it's certainly not going to be me answering those questions. It's the one that actually knows what they're talking about. It's this lady right here, Michelle Payne, aka PocketPsych. How are you going tonight?
I'm really great. I'm so excited to do this topic, James. It's been on our plate for about 18 months. I'm just so excited. Can't tell you.
Yeah, well, I don't want to get in our way. Then we may as well just straight hop to it. So, of course, here at Pocket Psych Podcast, we're talking about sports psychology, esports psychology. Could you give the real quick one-liner? What is esports psychology?
So, esports psychology is looking at things that players do, say, and think to help them perform better and get them to do it more often. If it leads to good performance. And if it doesn't lead to good performance, we want them to do it less often. So my job in esports is to maximise my team's performance. And I'm lucky enough to be joined by a team that I started working with not long ago. And they're going to be my guinea pigs for today as I'm teaching everybody how to bring the right energy for their game.
Great, yeah. So your job is you are a not only a sports psychologist, but an esports psychologist. How on earth do you get into that? Like, why are you qualified to do this? Why should people listen to your advice?
Right, so I'm a qualified sports psychologist, as you said. So I have the credentials that's recognised by my profession to say that I can work with traditional sport athletes. That's where I started. So I've got about a 35-year career working with athletes and players in a whole range of different sports, from professional, Olympians all the way down to just recreational athletes. And I started in esports 3.5 years ago when my son, who's a part owner of Chiefs, had a team that wanted to work with a sports psychologist, and my son said, I know one of those. And so I started working with that team and loved it. I love working with a team environment, and I decided that I want to make most of my career as much as possible in esports because it's just so much fun.
So we're covering quite a few topics today, which people can see down the side. But the theme overall of tonight's episode is how to bring the right energy to your game. What do you mean by that, Michelle?
So we'll be talking about how hyped up you need to be in order for you to perform at your best. So I'll be talking about how, an event has a certain amount of energy that is required, and then you have to work out where, are you higher or lower than that? How do you raise your energy level to meet the requirements of the competition so that you're always trying to perform at your best?
All right. Well, we have quite a few guests here today from one of the teams that you have been working with, as you said before. Do you want to introduce them now? Shall we get them in?
Sure, that'd be great. Thank you.
All right, guys, can you hear us?
Hello.
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 So we have 7 of you on. I believe it's can you explain maybe the roles of each person on the team? Can we just go through quickly and you say like what your role is within the team?
So it's a first-person shooter game, and we have 5 players and 2 coaches.
Great. And Michelle, you've got quite a few resources, slides and such. Just let me know when you want to bring those up and we can start.
All right. So are you happy to start, guys? Is that all right?
Yes.
Let's make a start then, shall we? Because I'm really excited to show you about this. So I want to start off with the first one, please, James. So we're talking about the inverted U hypothesis. And you might have, if you've ever played sport, you might have had a very advanced coach who said, have told you about how this works. So it's looking at the relationship between performance and arousal. So when we're talking about arousal, we're talking about how much energy you bring. You might see it in the literature called activation, but it's talking about how hyped up you need to be in order to perform at your best. So if we look at this diagram here, I think you can all see my cursor, right? So best performance, actually, let's look at the axes. So y-axis has performance. So the higher the score here, the better the performance. And on the x-axis, we have arousal levels. So we're talking about how hyped up you are. So low levels here on the left, medium levels in the center, and high levels at the right. And it's this inverted U relationship that results from those two variables. And I want you to notice that, best performance is happening up at the top here, but I want to start at the bottom left-hand corner first. So when we're talking about low levels of arousal, we're talking about like when you're asleep. You're not at all thinking about the game. Performance is not at all involved here, so it's not non-existent almost. But as we're maybe becoming more wakeful, so we're going from left to right on the x-axis, arousal levels are increasing slightly. So you might be in a situation here at low levels where you're still bored. Nothing much is happening. Nothing's on the line. Nothing much is happening. So becoming more and more alert as we go with increasing arousal until we get to this top part of the inverted U. So this is like the top of the rainbow. And you may have noticed, well, this occurs if we drop a line down to the x-axis, this occurs when there's medium levels of arousal. So, it's like Goldilocks, not too hyped up, not too little hyped up, but just right. And what I want you to notice is that it's not a single point at the top that, you must aim for this level of arousal and it's no good, either side. In actual fact, it's quite a broad range here. And performance is, not too bad a little bit to the left. It's not too bad a little to the right. So this broad range here is, if we sort of go down to the x-axis here, it's quite a wide range of arousal levels we can pitch ourselves at that will still lead to good performance. This particular range that's along the top here that's still associated with good performance is the zone of optimal functioning. So ZOF, zone of optimal functioning. And you've heard of probably players when they're describing their great performances, you might hear them say, or maybe the commentators say, oh, they were in the zone for that match. Have you heard them say that? So this particular zone means that, they've got their arousal levels right and they actually had a great performance. Everyone happy with that part of it so far?
Yeah, it's all making sense.
Yep. Okay, great. Okay, so it's okay to go a little bit too high. So if arousal levels continue to increase, it's okay. Arousal level performance doesn't drop off too fast, but at a certain point it starts to drop off quite rapidly, according to this model, and you become stressed and less able to compete well. Your performance drops off a little bit. So maybe someone in your team is annoying you a little bit, and it might be affecting your comms, or it might be, performance not just of yourself, but maybe of the whole team sort of drops off a little bit as well. But anyway, that's okay. But then as it gets maybe higher, there might be tilting in a major way, or you might be becoming more anxious or frustrated or something like that. Then performance will drop off a fair bit more, and we don't want to be at this stage where we're panicking. So have you ever experienced, does this make sense to you as a model, you can imagine that it made sense for you as a player, that you understand that performance isn't that great on the left-hand side of the model. There's a point where performance is actually quite good, and higher levels even still leads to performance drop-off.
Yeah, it all makes sense. It actually kind of reminds me of, or it seems very directly comparable to like revs on a car.
Okay.
Like putting an engine under stress with high revs, and then not getting the desired performance level out of it at the low end.
That's a really good example. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. Okay, so given this study, like 1908, it's a long time ago, and actually Yerkes and Dodson did this study on mice running a maze. And it's amazing to me to think that human beings, or an explanation of performance, fits in quite nicely with a comparable study of mice running a maze. Just blows me away. Anyway, so if you're happy with that part, let me move on to the next part. James, do we have any questions from the chat on that one so far?
No, not as of yet. It seems like people...
That's okay. No
all
problems. All right, let's move to the next one down. So now I want you to consider this idea that there are individual zones for each person. So let's have a look at the model. So we've got performance again on the y-axis, we've got arousal again on the x-axis, and we've got a whole lot of different inverted U's. So each colour represents a different person. And I want you to see that person A, first I want you to notice that even though they're all different, they all have like their best performance occurring about the same place. But for each person, if we drop a perpendicular down to the x-axis, person A says that they like to be much calmer, not quite so hyped up as person B. So we look at their perpendicular dropping down, it's higher up in the arousal scale than for person A. And person A likes to be much, much calmer than person C. And person C likes to be someone who's quite hyped up in order to perform at their best. So I want you to imagine where each of you might sit in, if we were to draw a map of our team, where do you reckon each of us might sit here? Are there any in our team who are more like person A or more like person C or more like person B? Who do you reckon in our team this sort of fits in with? Is there anyone in our team who's very, very who likes to be very, very hyped up?
On game day, I reckon we're all person C.
Yeah, yeah. I'd agree with that.
Really?
To a greater or lesser extent, I think it very much depends on the situation. I think the environment has a big factor because arousal and performance, they don't necessarily exist in a vacuum. It very much can fluctuate depending on the environment that the players find themselves in.
And the situation. And also, I want to point out too that even though it looks quite different here with person A, B, and C being quite spread out, I mean that's for the purposes of the diagram. In actual fact, they're much, much closer together. Mm-hmm. But the amount of hype one needs is also dependent on the situation. So, for instance, on attack rounds, we might need to be a little bit more hyped up to get the right energy compared to defense rounds where we're getting information and it's important that we clear our areas and be really precise about our work there. So there's differences within the game and as well as differences between individuals. Also, no, I'll leave it for that at the moment. So
I will also say, actually, Michelle, I think the energy, bringing the energy is probably more important on attack. Being more active in terms of energy is probably more important on attack. On defense,
I agree.
Typically, you're reacting to things.
Yeah.
So often
it's not helpful to be sort of on edge in defense in that way.
Yeah, you're very much reacting to things. So the energy that you bring is sort of the result of the information that you're gathering based on what's happening around you. Whereas on attack, I would say that to a certain extent you have to create that energy for yourself. So it's definitely a more stressful environment perhaps on attack versus defense.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So this is true of I've worked with a number of teams in a whole lot of different titles. So I've noticed this is true, the attack and defense difference for Counter-Strike and Valorant and Rainbow Six, those sort of attack and defense type first-person shooter games. Okay, so what I have left out that I wanted to talk about is... oh no, it's going to be on the next slide. I'm actually 2 slides away. I'll forget. I'm trying to go too far ahead.
We'll catch up with it.
Is everyone happy with this sort of concept though? Actually, I don't agree that we're all person C. If you think about fine differences, don't think of it in gross differences. Think about it in fine differences. Who's the person in our team that likes to be much less hyped up than others? Would you think? I'm not sure I've worked it out yet myself, but I agree you're all sort of pretty close together, but there will be differences.
That's a tough one because, like you said, I reckon we are quite close together. So maybe the coach because he's not allowed to speak.
I personally would say I think maybe Jesse is probably a little bit more serious, a little bit. He likes everybody to be hype and in a good mood, but he likes focus as well.
Think about the way he delivers comms. So they're very precise. It's a lower energy than many of you, and I think that's probably some of the reasons why some of the teams say, come on, get your energy up. For them, they might like it to be higher, but especially for someone doing the calling, often the person doing the calling needs to be a bit calmer to get all the things straight.
Mm-hmm.
So that would make sense to me as well.
Yeah, I think Jesse's definitely a person B, I would say.
Right.
Yeah, I think he exists maybe at the sort of slightly at the back edge of person B. Not quite...
This edge? You mean, or that edge?
Towards the back edge, I think. Or
that
like,
way.
he's certainly not... Like, Jesse's vocal, but not stressingly so.
Right.
If you get what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very even-keeled kind of level
yeah,
of communication.
I would agree probably there's not many of... I don't think there's anyone in person A. I think it'll be Jesse at this end, and then the others will be somewhere here.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, okay. All right, cool. So it's just it's important to know, how people might prefer their energy levels to be in, so that you know that what energy level works best for them. Because as I said, if you're getting too hyped up, then it leads to their worst performance. And I'll show you that by this diagram here. So this is an example of a team I worked with in 2020 where I mapped out what I thought was their energy levels. So they're the coloured ones, the coloured inverted U's. And I did this over a number of weeks looking at the energy levels that they brought and how, when is it that their performance started to drop off. And so I identified that there were two people who were slightly lower. Can you see how overlapping they are? So this is much more like how it is in real life. Mm-hmm. So the green and the dark yellow represent two people who are slightly lower than their teammates. And the blue and the light yellow are the two players who are slightly higher than the rest of their teammates. And the purple guy is sort of in between the whole lot. And I've put myself in here as a dashed line to represent, my bias as someone listening. I have to always think, well, this team is always going to be wanting to be much higher energy than I personally would like. But for me to say, hey, let's calm that energy down a bit, that would be crazy because they operate at a higher level than I do. And so I have to understand, okay, well, I have to let them go, but I'm looking to see when does their performance start to drop off. And then I will say, yep, the levels are too high or the levels need to be raised a little bit or whatever it is. So let's ignore me for a minute. We'll just look at the coloured ones. If we look at where I've got labelled B, this is the ideal sort of state for the two upper guys. And if I look at where A is, this is the ideal state roughly for the two lower guys. And if the team commed at B, it would be getting close to not such good performance for the two lower guys. And same thing with if we commed at A, then the two upper guys, it's not enough for them. So what we want to try and do is think of the team as being like its own entity, where it has its own energy, which is the sum of the people who are alive at the time. So let's assume we've got 5 of us alive at the time. The team energy should be pitched around C because that will still be good for the upper guys and the lower guys. So this is why sometimes I've mentioned to you guys in scrims that I think that we need to get our energy levels up because it will work better for us in our favour to try and have our brains switched in a bit more.
Right, and this average, sorry, I just to interrupt you.
This
average,
ahead.
Does this take into account your inverted U, or Is it purely
No,
based
so
on the 5?
it's based on the players, but I have to be careful of because what I think is too high, I know is probably just my own biases.
Right.
So I have to take that into account. That I think, okay, it sounds too high for me, but now I have to watch carefully and say, okay, is performance dropping off? If no, then I let them go. And if it is affecting performance, then I have to say something. Mm-hmm. And it's not just me who should be saying something. What I want to do is train the team to say to each other, hey, I think we need to get our levels up if our levels are a little bit on the low side, or suddenly our levels are too high. It's definitely affecting these guys here. Let's bring them back a little bit.
Right. And this assessment you make over what kind of time period?
Oh, a couple of weeks, probably.
A couple of weeks? Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's not long, not a long time, but I need to be able to hear enough scrims to understand, and different levels of pressure as well. I mean, just scrims themselves aren't that interesting because there's scrims, but
right, yes.
If you can hear some officials as well, that would help work out what's ideal performance wise for the team. Now, this is all very interesting so far, but it doesn't make a lot of sense in terms of what we can do about it. So this is where I depart now from what's currently known by the wider community into something that I've developed. It's my secret sauce. So listen up. So this is where, if we think of the team energy being like an entity, and we think about comms being the way that energy is expressed, this is why I'm so keen on listening to comms all the time, is because if we need to raise our comms energy, what we need to do is just speak a little bit faster, because the brain is really excellent at picking up differences. And when it notices that there's a change to something, it will pay more attention and switch on a little bit better so that you're able to, react faster to change as well in the environment. So where you suddenly see somebody, or where you create opportunities for yourself. Does that make sense to you? So if we comm a little bit faster, I'm not saying a whole lot faster, just a little bit faster, the brain will pick that up and say, okay, I'm switched on, I'm ready for something to happen. I'm expecting something to happen. And usually something does. You get some good picks, and when the energy is right. But when the energy is a little bit sluggish, let's go the opposite way. When the energy is too high, I would like the team to become aware, and I use in my other teams the word levels as a key word to try and get everyone to recognize, hey, what is our energy level right now? Do we need to go up or down? So usually it'll be really clear as to whether you need to raise or lower your energy. But let's say we're up here in the last rounds of a match, the dying rounds of a match, and there's lots of gunfights going on. So lots happening, and suddenly everyone's really quite hyped. What can happen is it's a bit like when there's a fire in a building. Are you going to pay attention to the person who's running around like a headless chook saying, fire, fire, emergency, emergency, but not really giving you anything strategic to do about it? Or are you going to listen to the guy who's calm and saying at the end, here's the stairs, everybody, take the stairs, just keep going down, all the way down. Just, the calmness will actually make you be more effective. And so if everyone is at this hyped up level, what happens is that mistakes happen, and it makes the team nervous when if it's too high a level for some people who are on this side. Now, if we're all mostly a little, on the higher end of things, that's okay. And the team sounds like to me like they are quite grouped together at that higher end. So for us, it's not so crucial. It's more crucial if you've got a couple of guys who are high and a couple of guys who are low. You have to pay more attention to what's going on. So if, for instance, in the course of the round, the two lower guys happen to be dead, then the team can go hell for leather on height, because that suits the remaining guys that are left. And so you do whatever's good for the team. Okay, have I lost anybody, or are we under control? So the way we manipulate it is by by the speed at which we speak. And if we can get our comms up and just speak a little bit faster, we will bring about the right energy that we need for the game as a team. And if we speak a little bit slower, we will reduce our energy, and that might be good for the team too. So we need to think about what are the circumstances we're in, what is the right energy for the team, and how we manipulate it is by the speed at which we speak. So I'm pretty sure the team has heard me speak a little bit or just mention the word levels, levels of energy. You've heard me talking about that sometimes in our debriefs, and talking about, we have the right energy, and sometimes Tim and I will have conversations on our spreadsheet saying, I think the energy level is too high here, and sure enough, performance drops off a little bit, or things like that. So we talk about these things, but now hopefully you're understanding why I'm keen for you to understand how you bring about the right energy as a team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, makes sense.
Can everyone follow that as that example okay? Now,
Definitely.
James, how are we going with any questions? How's the chat going? Are they all right with this?
It's pretty quiet. We only have one. It's more of a comment, really. Heard you were teaching noobs about Siege. So, bit of comic relief there for you guys.
Is that Lunchbox?
How rude.
That certainly is Lunchbox.
Lunchbox.
Good-o. All right, then. Let's keep moving on, shall we? So, go ahead. Is that a comment?
I was going to ask, are there any adverse effects to this this method of communication that you're talking about? Because sometimes people will react differently to different levels of energy. If someone is encouraging a more upbeat tone within the communication of the team, some people may react negatively to that.
Right.
Is that something that you found in practice, or is this like a theory?
It's definitely a theory. So what I've noticed, when people have said that in our team in particular, I have talked to the person that they're referring to and said, actually, I think your levels are actually okay. I think it's other things that are going on.
Right.
So the trickiness is you have to look at the energy level and see where it matches performance and see if performance drops off. So even if it's not the right energy level for that person, that person saying, we need to get our energy levels up, they need to understand that this is what that person needs in order for them to perform at their best.
Right.
Just be conscious of how it fits in with your teammates. It's not that everyone's all going to be shoehorned into the same thing. You just have to be conscious of how this affects your teammates as well.
Right. So are they, I guess the main point to drive home would be, are they operating within the same average, within the optimal average?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, good point.
I see that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Right, let's move on to the next one, shall we? So we've covered like the inverted U stuff, and everyone's got an idea about how this fits in terms of teams. But now I want to talk to you about how do you bring the right energy for yourself individually. Yeah. So that's the important part to it too. And it's got this scary model here. So don't be too scared by this one. It's 3 dimensions, so it's not too bad. Let me take through slowly. So we have performance on our y-axis again. We have physiological arousal now on our x-axis. And we have an axis coming out towards us, which is cognitive anxiety. So cognitive is talking about what's going on inside your head. What's the thinking that's going on? And so here we're often thinking about the importance of the competition being relevant on this scale. So as the importance of the competition increases, we're going further and further out this way. But I want to ignore this axis right for the moment, the z-axis, and I just want to look at the y and the x-axis. So we're talking about just the back face of this model. Before we get into that, I thought I might just show you what this means here. So I've got a piece of paper here, and the piece of paper is as though it's the surface of that graph. And so what it is that any particular point on that surface represents a person's performance at that moment in time. So let's just have a look at the back wall only of this model. So when cognitive anxiety is 0, we've just taken out that axis now. We're just looking at this back wall of the model. What I want you to notice here is that we've got a sort of an inverted U shape. It's a little bit flatter than we've seen before, but this is how it works in real life. This theory works in actual testing. And here we've got physiological arousal. We're talking about body symptoms of stress. So if you look back at me for a minute, it's whenever you get stressed, you will have a collection of symptoms that will be the same for you every single time. So for me, when I'm getting stressed, I get like sweaty hands, butterflies in my tummy, and my head goes a million miles an hour. And I know for any stressful situation I'm in, I get those same symptoms. What I want to know from you is, what have you noticed what symptoms of stress are common for you each time? Because it's the noticing that's the really important part.
Right. That's the cognitive axes.
No, it's the physiological stuff. So what body symptoms of stress do you have when you start to get stressed?
Right, yeah.
What have you noticed your body doing?
Just pain in stomach.
Yeah.
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 Shaky hands.
Shaking.
Yep.
Yes.
Shaky is quite a big one.
Yeah.
And sweaty hands.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a bit of a vicious cycle, actually.
Tell me what you mean.
The shaky hands. Well,
Keyed up.
your hands shake due to stress, which causes you to miss or whiff,
Perform badly.
badly, and then that causes a snowball effect.
More stress.
Which causes you
Yeah,
to
right.
More stress. Yeah.
Correct.
And the classic, the leg, where it can't stay still.
Right, the jiggling leg, yep.
Yes.
I'm doing that right now.
Oh, that's all right then. Okay, so have you noticed that you have the same sort of symptoms every time you get stressed? And the idea is it's a little bit like a volcano. So if you think of your emotions being like a volcano in your body, so you've got the emotions sort of bubbling away at the bottom of the volcano, and as the pressure builds up slightly, so getting more stressed, we get like the lava sort of bobbing up in front of the volcano. You think, oh, something's about to happen. Now at that point, before the volcano blows up, you have an opportunity to sort of calm yourself down, like pouring water on the volcano to sort of calm the volcano down. If you don't do that and you let the pressure build up, the volcano is just going to explode. So we don't want that, because that will definitely lead to bad performance. So the idea is on the model, so we've got like little symptoms of stress starting to build up as we're going up towards our optimum performance. Now, it's important to realise that it's okay to feel a little bit stressed about a match coming up, and especially if it's an important sort of match, but a match coming up, because you need some sort of prompt to say, hey, something exciting is about to happen, or something's about to happen, I need to pay attention or be awake or whatever. So having some sort of stresses is a good thing. It keeps us motivated and interested in what's going on. But it gets to this certain this point here where we want optimal performance. But if our symptoms of stress continue to increase, our performance is going to drop off, and it won't be much good at this point down here. So is everyone happy that this sort of follows like an inverted U? That we can use our body symptoms of stress to identify for us, how much stress is okay. And we can actually we can take some steps to try and stay at this optimal zone if we know how to calm ourselves down. We don't want to go onto the right-hand side where performance drops off. Is everyone okay with that part?
Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, good. We're following the model okay. Yeah. So now let's introduce this cognitive anxiety, this worry element. And if I point out and say, okay, let's imagine that on this line here we've got scrims against a team that has no outcome at all. We're just normal scrims, no big deal. And then we've got scrims against a team that we should beat quite easily. We've got scrims against a team that is quite challenging, And then we've got maybe an official coming up that's against an easy team we expected to beat, and maybe an official against a team that's much harder, and then maybe we're getting to a major. So out here, it's the maximum importance for us. And I want you to see that across, the beginning part of this graph, it's all much the same. So it starts off being like an inverted U, best performances across the middle. But here I want you to see that at the most important event possible, a small shift in arousal that's too far to the right can lead to this catastrophic drop from point A to point B. And then we'll sort of languish in this form slump, maybe for a day, a week, a couple of weeks. I've been in the worst form slump with one of my teams for 8 weeks, and it nearly killed us. It was just truly horrible. So have you ever experienced this unusual thing where something you wanted so badly, suddenly you are unable to function correctly, and you had this catastrophic drop in performance from A to B? Have you ever experienced that in your life? And can you give an example of that if possible?
Ooh. Yes, I can, actually. It's sort of a personal story, but so before I was involved with Siege, I worked in the film industry, and my dream job was to work at Weta Digital. And I took an interview, and I got a trial period, and it lasted about a month, and I barely slept. I got really sick. I was constantly stressing, and my performance just took a nosedive, and I didn't my contract did not get renewed. So
oh, what a shame.
That was absolutely I mean, I'm okay now, but
yeah
but
devastating at the time.
Yeah, that was the height. That was the performance surface, the point A, and then coming down off that was definitely the slump, as you say.
Yep. Yeah.
Just the perfect storm of, I guess, accumulation of cognitive and body stress and just a whole bunch of things happening at once.
Yeah, good one. Thanks, Tim. Mine's a job interview one too. I went for a sports psychology job at a university. I knew I could do this job on my ear. It was just made for me. And I went to the interview, I thought pretty well prepared, but I was sitting in front of the interview panel, like there was me and like 7 other people, so it's pretty grueling. Mm-hmm. And they're asking me questions, and my brain went to mush. It was just horrible. And they were like throwing me the easiest questions, and I wish I could have answered, but I could not do it. It was just the worst experience I've ever had, and it kills me because I could have done that job so easily, but I didn't get it because my interview was just so bad. And you think, oh my goodness, that was just the worst thing ever. I wanted that job so badly. Anyone got an esports related one? Have you ever been in a situation like that one?
I don't think I have, so
no examples. I don't know. What about relegations?
Yeah, but it's never been a massive drop, so...
Yeah, it'd be like, mine would probably be like playing CL and relegating these guys, and then
yeah, come on, bro,
and then losing the whole year, like everything, like last place the whole year. Awful.
Yeah,
Sad
that'd be
and
a pretty
awful.
big drop too when you don't win.
Yeah, like when I relegated and stuff.
Right.
Yeah,
what's interesting is it's worth pointing out here. One of the other teams that I worked with in Rocket League performed really well, unexpectedly well in an official, and suddenly things change in terms of our expectations for ourselves. And after that, we were at B, and this is the one we had with our 8-week season of just form slump. It was horrible. But we managed to get ourselves back on track for the next major and qualified for that. Don't know how. It was just a total fluke, but it nearly killed us to be in a form slump. And interestingly, at the time, I thought that there was only one thing wrong with our team. and we were working on that, and we were trying our hardest to fix it, and everyone could see how hard we were trying to fix it, and, because we did our debrief all the time, and so I knew how hard, and everyone knew how hard everyone was working to try and fix it, but until I worked out that every person on the team, there's a 3-man team, so every person on the team had one particular thing that wasn't being fixed. Until we fixed each of those things up, then we managed to bounce back. But until we recognised there were 3 things wrong, not one thing wrong, that was the game changer for us. But we had our form drop from A to B because our expectations changed as a result of that great win we had. So I often look at our teams, or any of the teams I'm working with, and say, there's actually a danger of unexpected wins that, where we perform a whole lot better than we think. And I try hard to make sure I let the team know that, hey, let's not get ahead of ourselves. We've still got to keep working hard. It's not time to put our foot off the accelerator, that sort of stuff. So trying to avoid the change in expectations affecting our long-term future.
Right, yeah. That's something actually that I've noticed you put a focus on during scrims is having not necessarily a narrow mindset, but one of complete focus on a much smaller...
on the processes.
Yeah, on the processes rather than the outcomes, I guess.
Correct. Yeah. So that will be a topic we'll cover another time in these talks.
Right, yes.
But, so thank you for pointing that out. A lot of these topics are going to be like interchangeable, things that I mention all the time. They're going to be coming across in different areas. But thanks for pointing that out. That's good.
Lots of overlap.
Yep. So, go ahead.
It's a little bit off topic, but would you say it's easier to fix issues in a team like Rocket League where how they have only 3 players? Or would you say it's easier when you've got 5 players to work with? Obviously, I think bring more, but...
I think not only the number of players, but the type of game makes it easier. So, so for instance, in Siege, where you've got 5 players, but it's on a map that's all over the place, and there's lots of things that can go wrong. Whereas in Rocket League, it's a bit more confined, and everyone has more defined roles, and there's patterns that you can watch for. Much easier than it's not so much patterns that you're looking for in Siege. So yeah, I definitely agree there's differences there.
Okay.
What I was going to say with this one too is that you will have noticed probably whenever you get a team that's at the grand final, they've been selected and made a grand final. I'm thinking about traditional sport at the moment, where let's say the journalists are asking the coach on maybe the morning of the grand final, or maybe a day or so before the grand final, how's the team feeling? Because everyone wants to know what's the inside of the team and how everyone's going. So they say, tell us how the team's going. Give us the inside scoop. And the coach is saying, well, we're just going to take it one game at a time. We're just going to treat it like any other match. You've heard them say that, right? What they're trying to do is really talk to their teammates and say, okay, let's walk back this idea of giving so much importance to that match. Let's walk back a little bit and give it less importance. Because if we go up here and we just follow this arrow along here, what happens if, when we want to try and aim for our best performance, that's great. But if we go too far to the right, it's only a little drop off here. And if there's only a little drop off, it means you can probably fix yourself up on the day and still try and get yourself back up here. Whereas I think the drop off from A to B, it's too far and it's unlikely you'll get back. So you will have seen maybe... tennis players, for instance, at Wimbledon, choking under pressure. They just can't get themselves back to play well, to improve themselves on the day, and it may well lead to a form slump for some time. But if they had have paid less attention to the importance of the match, they might well have been able to recover and got themselves back up to this good form again. So have you ever noticed, coaches trying to de-emphasize the importance of a match? I'm telling this to you guys as well all the time as well, that I don't want us to pay attention to how important the match is, or even, the reputation of the team we're up against, because what we have to do is pay attention to ourselves. we're the ones that can control, or we're more likely to be responsible for our own for how we perform in a much more significant way compared to paying attention to our opponent or paying attention to the importance of the match.
Right.
We need to pay attention to what we can do and do all the things we can 100% correctly. And if we do that, the results will look after itself.
That sort of reminds me of a Sun Tzu quote. You know Sun Tzu, The Art of War.
Yep.
I think it's first secure yourself against defeat before seeking victory, I think is the saying.
Perfect.
So
exactly. That sums it up nicely.
It's a little bit like that.
Yeah, exactly like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the model. What they've noticed actually works in real life, but it doesn't really give us a lot of explanation as to what we can actually do about it. So although the theory is, great, what I want to do is show you this last one now, because this one's a beauty. This one, I think, works best to explain what's going on. So here, I want to talk about this. There's a few things I want to talk about before we actually get into the model. So I've spoken to you about this volcano analogy, about understanding, how physiological arousal works and sort of giving yourself some strategies for calming yourself down. So this model will actually talk about that here on the x-axis. But I want to talk to you about this idea that every event has a certain amount of energy to it, and we have to work out whether we're below what's required or whether we're above what's required for ourselves in order to meet the challenge of whatever energy is required. So some events, like scrims, they're low energy, they don't need much. You just, doodle around and get yourself here. But some things, like officials, they don't necessarily require more energy, but they have more energy associated with them, right? So it's very important that you understand, whether you're higher than or lower than the energy that you have for that event. So that's the first concept I want you to understand. We're trying to work out ways that we can raise or lower our energy levels in order to meet the challenge of the event. The second thing I want you to understand is with this theory, with reversal theory, Apter is talking about there being like two types of people. And he uses a whole lot of Greek terms, which is unfortunate because I think that it makes it a little bit harder for people to understand what's going on. But anyway, he's called these two groups of people. One's telic and one's paratelic. So telic is goal-oriented in Greek, and paratelic, para meaning other than, so other than goal-oriented is excitement-seeking. And he's talking about these two groups of people in much the same way that I want to talk to you about introverts and extroverts. So forget the model for 1 minute. Do you all understand, do you know what introverts and extroverts are? So introverts are people who get energized by being away from other people. And it's not to say they can't be in a group and in a party and having a great time, because they can, but afterwards they would need to recharge their batteries by being away from other people. That's how they will function at their best. And for extroverts, these are people who like to be around other people. They get energized by being around other people. And it's not to say they can't be alone, they can, but afterwards they would need to be energized by being around other people again. So if you think of them as being like anchors, at either end of a continuum, like a normal curve where a few people are at either end, true introverts or true extroverts, and the majority of people are sort of in the middle. It's the same sort of concept as telics and paratelics, where they're anchored at either end too, with a few people at either end, and the majority of people are somewhere in the middle. And that's why it's important when we're considering a model like this that we understand that we have to know how do we raise our energy and how do we lower our energy depending on what the situation requires. We need to know both sides because most of us aren't true telics or true paratelics. We're somewhere in the middle. We're likely to be in the middle. So that's the first thing I want to say. Let me describe what's happening here, and then I'll ask if you've got any questions before we go too much further. So here on the y-axis, we no longer have performance. We've got something called hedonic tone. And hedonic tone is talking about how pleasant or unpleasant you find the circumstances. Now, have you ever heard of the word hedonism before? It's a really unusual word. Anyone heard of it before? Hedonism?
Yep.
Nope.
Yeah, anyone?
Right?
It would be a Greek word. So it's talking about, how hedonism. If someone lives a hedonistic life, it means they're doing stuff, whatever they want to do, they do it for pleasure. And so whenever I think of the word hedonism, I'm thinking of like a black and white movie of a Roman emperor sitting back on his chair with the Greek slaves peeling the grape skin off the grapes, because who likes to eat grape skin? And they've got the Roman slaves sort of fanning them with ostrich feathers to keep them cool. And these Roman emperors get to live a life of doing whatever they want to do. So that's how I think of hedonism anyway. So if we think of hedonic tone being up here, so how pleasant are you experiencing this situation? Up the top here is most pleasant, and at the bottom is unpleasant. And on the x-axis, we've got arousal levels one more time. So we've got low, medium, and high. And here we've got our two groups of people. So telic, remember, are goal-oriented, and paratelic are excitement-seeking. And what this theory says, now, Apter developed this theory from health psychology. So he was most interested in looking at how do we motivate people to give up unhealthy behaviours? How do we stop them drinking and smoking and taking drugs and, making them eat healthy foods and do all these things? So that's where he's come from with this model. And it was hijacked in some ways by a mate of mine, John Kerr, who said, no, I want to actually pinch this for sport, and we're going to put a dotted line in here and say, okay, athletes perform at their best when they're above this dotted line. And so for a telic person, they will perform at their best and find it a pleasant state when they're experiencing being relaxed. And for a paratelic person, they'll perform at their best when they're in this excited state under high levels of arousal. So are you sort of getting a feel for the model so far? Because I want to give you some examples of athletes, and then you'll hopefully be a bit clearer.
I think I might be telic.
You think, yeah?
Yeah.
So, okay, it's interesting to try and work out, whether you are a telic person or a paratelic person. And there are questionnaires that can do it. But for me, I'm for sure I'm a telic person. I taught at university for like 30 odd years. So if I gave you all an assignment to do in a month's time, and I said, okay, I'll do it in a month, just hand it in a month's time, the telic people will get the assignment done in the first week, thereabouts, and then just chill and have a relaxing time, because that's how they'll do it, and they'll hand their assignment in on time. That's fine.
Lies.
And the paratelic people will party for the first 3 weeks and 6 days, and on the night before we'll say, oh, I've just remembered I've got to do this assignment. Now I'm motivated to do it because I've only got a couple of hours to get it done, and they'll hand it in time. Well, hopefully they'll hand it in time, but they'll have left it to the last minute because they need that extra pressure to make them do the work. Okay, so now where do you think you fit?
Oh, my position has switched.
Really?
Based on that description, no.
Okay.
When it comes to playing games, I think I definitely fall within the telic category, but
right. In other life.
Perhaps in other areas, maybe more paratelic. But therein lies the dichotomy, I guess.
Yes, that's right, and it might depend on situations and whatever else. So, but also, it's been said too that if I asked you, what you did on the weekend, I tend to forget things once they've happened because I'm hopeless with my memory. But if you are able to tell me what you did on the weekend, if you were someone who picked out the highlights and told me I did this and this and this, and they were the highlights of the weekend, you're more likely to be a paratelic person. Whereas if you went through chronologically and said, on Saturday I did this, 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 and on Sunday I did this, 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 you're more likely to be a telic person. They say that's an indicator as well. But probably a questionnaire to identify it would be better. But this is a rough way. But bearing in mind too, most of us are going to be in the middle. We're going to be flexible. So we're sort of in between both, and that's why probably, Tim, you could imagine yourself fitting into both categories quite easily.
Yeah, under different circumstances, I think I would fit into both categories.
Right. So is everyone sort of okay so far with this idea? Okay.
Definitely the guy that starts my uni assignments at the latest point.
Really?
Up to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So let's have a look at some examples, because even if you don't know these people, you'll understand from what I'm saying with the example how you actually can make this work for you. So I didn't actually work with these people. I'm just describing them from what I know about them as athletes. So there was a tennis player. I'm not using any names here. There's a tennis player who played for Australia who was clearly, to me, a very paratelic person. He performed at his best when he was in this excited state. And when he was playing players that were not as good as him in his eyes, he would often allow them to get ahead because he would need them to be ahead to kickstart his own start of his run, so that he would feel challenged enough to try and win from that point.
Which tennis player is this?
Sorry?
Which tennis player is this? This isn't Rod Laver, is it, or someone like that?
Well, it is someone like that, but that's not him. No,
right, okay.
I have someone in mind that I'm talking about, but I don't really want to mention names.
Right. Oh, okay, right. This is a currently competing tennis player.
Not a currently competing one, but I'll just leave it at that, and I'll tell you later.
Okay.
All right. So when this particular player was a youngster, he was very, very, very talented. So in like 12, 14. And he would be winning a lot of matches at his age group. But he was universally hated by people because the way he won would often be where he'd pick a fight with his opponent or with the umpire, and he would, in picking a fight, he would suddenly feel as though it was me versus them. And again, he would need that feeling of I have to overcome these odds. This is what they're all against me. I have to overcome it, and he would use that as a spur when he was in a bored state. He would use that as a spur to get himself to be playing well, and he understood that would work for him, but it meant that the public didn't like him. And then when he was about 18, he came up with this idea about how to spur himself on, and he'd be doing this signature move, and he'd say, come on, to himself, and it would gee himself up that way, which was a socially acceptable way of doing it, and suddenly the public were on side, and he enjoyed a very long career as a result. But he managed to sort of work out how he could get the right amount of arousal for him to help him perform at his best. He did that himself, I believe. I don't think anyone shared that with him as to how to do it. So I thought that was quite interesting. My telic example is, so you may or may not know, I was a 400-meter hurdler in another lifetime in another body size. And a couple of years younger than me was a very, very good sprinter. And he would compete around Australia against, at venues he knew quite well, against competitors he would know very, very well, because he'd, compete against them very regularly every week almost. And he would win his races in a relaxed state. He knew he had them all beaten. He was the number one sprinter for many, many years. Anyway, he would get selected for Olympic Games, and when that happened, you know how they bring them out at the Olympic Games and they line them up at the start, and they've got the cameras on them, and the people, the competitors are waving at the crowd as they're being introduced. when this guy was introduced at the Olympic Games, he looked like as white as a ghost, like he was about to throw up on the line. And you could tell automatically that he was, beaten before he'd started. He was so anxious down here that he wouldn't have been able to compete at his best. And actually, he never showed really great form when he competed overseas in those major events. He was great domestically, but not so great at times when it really mattered. And this is true, well, a lot of athletes are a bit like that as well. So, both of those examples, are they sort of clear enough for you? And let's see how we would actually make them change to help them get in the right state. Is everyone happy with this description so far?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Great, thank you. So let's have a look at the x-axis to start with. So hopefully that's big enough for you to see. So what we can do for both of our telic and our paratelic people who are in unpleasant states down here, let's take our paratelic person first. We want to manipulate heart rate because this is something we can do quite easily. And we want to try and increase our heart rate. So we're going from low to higher levels of arousal. And the idea is we want to go up this graph to be in an excited state by increasing our arousal level. So if we increase our heart rate, we can breathe harder and shallower. So when we're breathing from just the top part of our lungs, which I tend to do because I'm very, very lazy. So the top part of our lungs, but let's say we take 2 or 3 short, sharp breaths just from the top part of our lungs. It's almost like panting. We don't want to do too much of it because we don't want to pass out. So just a couple of short, sharp breaths will stress our heart. The heart, there's a strong connection between brain and heart. So when there's not enough oxygen in the bloodstream, the brain will say to the heart, okay, pump faster because I need more oxygen. And so the brain will pump the heart will pump a little bit faster, the heart rate will go up, and the brain suddenly says, oh, I must be getting excited because it's trying to interpret all the time what's happening physiologically. The brain will try to interpret and tell a story to say what's going on, what the body should be doing next. So breathing harder and shallower is one way to do it, but probably more effectively, if you do exercise just a little bit to increase your heart rate, you can make the brain think that it's getting more switched on. So in esports, for instance, I have a lot of players who believe, especially in Rocket League, for one, but in other first-person shooter games, when they know they need to get, to raise their arousal levels a little bit higher, their energy levels a bit higher, what they can do is like do a couple of push-ups, or they can couple of jumping jacks, or jump up and down on the spot, or even just stand up, sit down, stand up, sit down, stand up, sit down. That will raise the heart rate. So not too much. You don't do a whole lot. But you want to increase the heart rate, and that will tell the brain, hey, I'm starting to get more switched on. So I have, as I said, I have Rocket League players who in the break, they would jump down and do 10 push-ups, and that would be what works for them. Very, very common. The other common way is to listen to music with a louder, faster beat. So your heart rate will take on the beat of the music. And so you're listening to beats per minute, song. I get my athletes to come up with 2 different playlists. So I know many of you will have a playlist you would listen to, but I want you to think about getting a more strategic one organised where you have just fast beat music and just slow beat music. So when I'm talking about fast beat, I'm talking about 80 beats a minute or more. If you Google some tunes that you like and just put the name in Google and put BPM at the end, Google will tell you how fast the beats per minute are. So you're looking at 80 beats a minute or more, get a collection of maybe 10 or 12 songs and put them in a fast beat music playlist. And if you listen to those, that will help hype you up as well. So if you're and because I want most of us, to have alternative strategies to how to raise your heart rate or to lower your heart rate, I want you all to sort of have a playlist like this. So a fast beat playlist and a slow beat playlist. We'll get to that in a minute. So you can use any of those 3 strategies. You don't have to use all 3 of them, but any of those 3 strategies, and you should be moving from low levels of arousal down here being feeling bored to suddenly being a bit more excited and hyped up, and you're more likely to perform at your best up here. So that's how you would change it physiologically if you're a paratelic person. That is, you're needing to raise your energy levels to get them up a little bit higher. For a telic person, so someone who is goal-oriented, someone who is feeling anxious under high levels of arousal, what we need to do is to try and decrease our heart rate. So what we want to do here is to breathe deeply, slowly. So if you put your one hand on your chest and one hand on your abdomen, so that your lower hand, the little finger, is about where your belly button is. You do that now. That's about the size of your lungs in your body. So they're quite large organs. And as you're filling up your lungs all the way to the bottom, what you're doing is inflating the lungs, and it will expand your cavity, so the core of your body, so it'll push your intestines and stomach out a little. So your lower hand, as you fill up your lungs, your lower hand should come away from your spine slightly as you're inflating your lungs. So you're breathing in, your hand comes away from your spine. As you breathe out, your hand will return back towards your spine just a little. We're not talking about big movement, just small movement. But filling your lungs right to the bottom is a really easy skill to have. 3 deep breaths. You don't have to have your hands on your body. That's just for illustrative purposes tonight. But 3 deep breaths is the go-to method for calming yourself down. And the idea is you want to be able to think more clearly. You've got more oxygen in your bloodstream. Your brain appreciates that and can make better decisions. So any time that you need to de-stress, 3 deep breaths is going to be your go-to method. And the way that you breathe in and out is also pretty important. So if you breathe in through your nose for a count of 4 and breathe out through your mouth for a count of 6, with the outward breath always being longer than the inward breath, then that's a more relaxing type rhythm and will de-stress you fastest. So breathing is an important way to control heart rate. You would avoid exercise close to the start of an event. So if you were someone who liked to visit the gym before an official, you wouldn't do that like go to the gym, then rush home, then sit down in your chair and away you go. No, you would do that so that you would do that in the morning, have plenty of time in between, so that there's downtime. You don't want to have your heart rate increasing if you can possibly help it. You would also have music with a softer, slower beat. So again, your heart rate takes on the beat of the music. So your playlist of 10 to 12 songs, we're looking for songs now with beats per minute of like 60, no more than 65 beats a minute. So you have these 2 collection of playlists of music, and you would choose which one you wanted to listen to depending on whether you needed to raise or lower your energy levels. Now, is everyone okay with the discussion we've been having about changing arousal levels here physiologically? Mm-hmm. Has anyone got any questions?
It seems like music's the way to go as far as
it's an easy way, isn't it?
Your heartbeat.
I feel like it definitely helps for me. I already do that. Listen to hyped up music before playing.
Have you got a playlist strategically chosen? So some people, when they listen to their playlists, their music sort of goes fast beat music, slow beat music, fast beat. It's not really. It's music they like, which is great, but it's not really strategically picked for heart rate.
I just listen to fast songs. I'm not sure.
That's what you prefer anyway, right?
Yeah.
Nothing gets your heart rate up more than listening to the 21 album by Adele and screaming "Rolling in the Deep" to yourself while tuning.
Who are you thinking of when you're saying this?
Me.
Oh, okay.
I love some cheeky Adele just screaming it to yourself. It's the best way.
Fair enough. All right.
Couldn't agree more.
Oh, that sounds good. So you've got something that works for you. That's the important part. Is anyone lost by any of those things? So have you ever tried using exercise as a way to increase your heart rate rather than music?
Yeah, that's actually why I'm really fit and good looking. Lots of exercise.
Okay. I won't go there. Alrighty. Oh, I'll give you the head back in the game, Michelle. Okay, so let's move on from the physiological stuff because that clearly is something, a strategy we've already worked on. But this may not be the best way. I mean, this is good on the day of the competition, but in the lead up to a competition, there may be a better way. So let me talk about this way. It's called reversal theory because we can actually reverse from being paratelic to telic, or telic to paratelic. If you look at these arrows that are going upwards, I want to describe these ways because these are really important and give us much better tips, I think, for how to think about our events. Let's stick with our, we're going to do our paratelic guy first. Okay, our tennis player. So if he's in a bored state playing tennis, and remember I said that we don't really want him to be using his opponent getting ahead in order to fire himself up because he might leave it too late. He might let them win because he hasn't given himself enough time to get back. So in order for him to be thinking in the best way and to go out onto the court and be switched on right from the very beginning, we would get him to change his thinking. And so he would, or what I would get him to do is to, let me go back. You know how the outcome is like win or loss with the tennis match? If we broke the event into parts, into, points, sets, matches, games, all that sort of stuff, the smallest component is points. And let's say we set him a challenge so that we want him to try and get 3 points in a row and, give himself a tick, and then 3 points in a row, and then string together as many 3 points in a row as he can possibly do. So he's inspired by this mini challenge that's going on, and he's really enjoying that challenge. He responds well to that sort of challenge. Then he would be switched on, and if he strung all those 3 points in a row together and did well on that point, then the outcome will look after itself. So he's now not paying so much attention to his opponent or the importance of the game, which in his mind is quite low. Instead, he's setting himself a mini challenge and he's doing things in a productive way. He knows he can do it because he thinks he's got this person beaten already. So he's quite relaxed about it. It's not making him, giving himself more arousal level, but he's still operating at a low level of arousal, but he's switched on because he's got a mini challenge happening at the moment. Everyone okay with that idea?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, right. So now we think about our 100-meter sprinter, and he's going to do the same sort of change of thinking. He's going to go from anxious to excited. He's reinterpreting these nerves of anxiety to feeling excited. But the risk is when you are normally excited, if we think back to our inverted U, with high levels of arousal, we get drop-off of performance. And high levels of arousal can also be like increased stress or anxiety, but it could also equally be excitement because both of them aren't that good for performance by themselves. If you've suddenly won something quite recently, like if you're a 100-meter sprinter and you've won like the 200 meters an hour beforehand, you might be quite excited about the fact that you've won an Olympic medal or whatever, but how do you get that excitement level so that you're refocusing now for your next event? It's really hard to do. So just being excited by itself isn't the panacea that you want. What we have to do is think of it in a focused way. So for our 100-meter sprinter, he's anxious. He's going to try and reinterpret his nerves that he feels as being excited and ready for the event. But the way he actually does it is by breaking the event into parts. So just like we did with our tennis match, we're going to break the 100 meters into parts and think about, okay, what are the crucial moments that I need to pay attention? So it's going to be reacting to the gun, coming out of the block smoothly, relaxing through the middle part of the race, and throwing at the line. Now these are 4 things that if he did them really, really well, he would perform a great time. Instead, at the moment, he's at the start line and he's comparing himself to the other guys and he's thinking, gee, I'm in a good field here. I'm a bit worried. I'm not sure how I'm going to go. I might not get a medal. There's going to be this much difference between all of us. And he's sort of talking himself out of it at the moment. But instead of thinking about comparing himself to others, we get him to do the 4 things that he knows he can do that he's done a gazillion times before. So it's all in his control. If he does them, each of those things to the best of his ability and lets the result take care of itself, he's giving himself the best chance to win or to do as well as he possibly can at least. So can you see a parallel for you as players in esports, how you might break your event into parts, because it's the same thing for both of them, break it into parts and pay attention to the things you can control? So tell me more about how you see you being able to use that information. What's the smallest part that would make sense to you in your game? Breaking into parts, come on.
Well, I mean, the first kill, first pick tends to determine round win.
Okay.
And the round is the smallest measure.
I would. Sorry to interrupt you. Sorry. I would argue that the smallest component, when we know we've got a result, really is like win or loss for each round, right? And then the parts that we can try and control are the parts that you're talking about, like getting the first kill, getting man advantage somewhere else, whatever else. What? So in order for you to get the first kill and in order for you to get man advantage, what do you as a player need to do? What will help you the most?
I don't really know.
It's really
I'm not really too sure.
It's really just putting yourself in that situation, no? A situation where you feel you can achieve that.
Right, but then I'm asking you as a sports psych, what things would you need to think about in order to give yourself the best chance of performing well? So I'm thinking of things like guns up, crosshair placement being right,
listening,
getting the right positioning.
Yeah.
Those little things, like things we measure in our key performance indicators in our debrief, getting all those little things right will lead to better performance. And that's why we measure them. Does that make sense? So they're things that are within our control, that if we did them right as often as possible, we'd put ourselves and our team in the best we could possibly do. I mean, there are things that work against us, of course, that are not in our control, that drive us nuts, like the state of the servers, the ping, all those things that we have no control over. So, as a team, we always are talking about, we don't want to talk about the ping because we know that's just how horrible that is for us. But if we're paying attention to the things we can control and doing them the best we possibly can, that will lead to our best performance under the circumstances.
That's sort of the telic branch speaking, isn't it? Or that high anxiousness.
The same sort of way of thinking is for both, actually. It's for everybody.
Right, I see.
So you're always going to be trying to break the event into parts and measuring the things you can control.
Could it be like making sure like I'm in a good mood could probably increase performance over.
Absolutely.
So like I guess going back to like energy levels, making sure they're there.
Correct.
And they're at the right spot.
Yep. So there's things emotionally you can do and things physically you can do.
So breathing and music, I guess, does fall into that category.
Yeah. So the way I would see this mostly is that we would probably in the lead up to a competition we'd be wanting to think about things that we can control that we want to try and do our best. So we'd be doing that in scrims and as much as possible. But maybe at a particular event, on the morning of a competition or maybe during the competition, we might want to do the physiological stuff, the heart rate manipulation stuff as required. But overall, I think the change in thinking is the better way to go about things in a gross sort of level. we should be trying to do this all the time. And this gets to the idea that you should always pay attention to the things you can control and not worry about things you can't control. But that's, again, another topic.
Right, yeah.
How are we looking for questions? Are there any questions at all from anybody, James?
Well, some time ago there was a question from one of our
Sorry.
guests. No, it's fine. It's from one of our actual guests. Log, did you actually want to say that question? It was quite a while ago.
Yeah. I thought we were going to bring it up a while ago, and then we kind of kept moving. So I was like,
just smash it out if you want. Like,
yeah, smash it out.
I said, is there ever a point where building off of confidence and knowing the significance of a win or loss could probably bring better performance or better mindset? Or is this kind of way of thinking always going to be destructive? So it was when we were talking about kind of resetting, and you were talking about how the coach talks to, journalists.
Yeah.
And says, we're taking it one game at a time and stuff.
Right.
So yeah, I guess I was curious on whether, building off the fact that you're winning games that maybe you shouldn't or something, and building that confidence and having that, excitement, could that ever?
Yeah, absolutely. So some players are actually going to want to have that rev up talk. It's a really foreign one to me because it's not something I want or need. It would actually be detrimental to me, but I know there are definitely players who would thrive on a coach giving that rev up talk and motivating players in that way. But you have to understand that in a team environment, not everyone is going to react in the same way. And so for a coach to give that rev up talk, and I'm thinking of traditional sports now with a football team of like 20 players, let's say, something like that, that sort of number. If a coach gave that rev up talk right before the players all went out, that would be great. Some players would run through brick walls and they'd respond really well to it. But a lot of players, that would really affect their performance in a bad way.
Yeah.
And so what coaches do these days is they might give their rev up talk like an hour before the start, and then players in them, the people who need that sort of rev up would have that in their mind as they're doing their whatever they're strapping and whatever they need to do before the match actually starts. And those players who didn't want to hear that sort of rev up talk would have a chance to debrief themselves and remove themselves psychologically from that talk and prepare themselves their right way. So that's the way that traditional sports handle that these days. What are you saying to Tim to Trent that you want them to rev you up?
Well, not really. I mean, we haven't had an official in quite a while.
No.
And especially with our roster, I mean, the best we had was SI, which I think everybody came in and did their best at, and I don't think it was too much. I don't think there was anything going into that game that was some people being too hyped or others being not hyped enough. I think it was really good. Mm-hmm. But I'd probably say just for future, like, you go into a game and you beat, let's say you go to a major, right? And you go into groups and you walk out and you beat FaZe, something like that, and then you go on. It's kind of more so, is it take it one game at a go and be like, okay, well, that's cool, we beat FaZe, but, it doesn't matter, boys, everyone, move on.
Yeah, I think that's wise. I think, because you don't want to dwell too much on stuff that you've already done. You've got something else ahead of you now, and you've got another job in front of you. So you've got to concentrate on the job ahead of you.
Yeah.
But yeah, by all means, it's not to say you can't celebrate having a great win or being excited about that. That's great, but that takes energy out of you. So you have to understand that too.
Yeah. Makes sense.
That's a good point. Thank you for raising it.
Now, there was one other question. I'm not sure how relevant it is to the topic, but maybe there's a way you could tie it in, or maybe there's just a way that you
I'll try.
So, it's a very general question. It's from someone in the chat called Kelly Freer. And the question is, how do I deal with bad teammates in solo queue?
Yeah.
Perhaps there's a mental side to that, is there?
Maybe some of the players might be able to answer that a little bit better than I could.
PocketPsych.
Go message Devmarta on Twitter.
I think if you're solo queuing, I think you've really put yourself in a bit of a box. So you can really only focus on yourself and be the best teammate that you possibly can, and to be exude the qualities that you wish your teammates had, and you will raise them up with you. I think is probably the best thing.
But also, it's a way to practice your mental skills, isn't it? In
absolutely, absolutely. It will test you.
I'd probably say from personal experience over the last few days, just trying to solo queue this season, I would probably say that go in with low expectations and come out with like high regards of your result, because you're going into a game where you need 5 people talking to each other, and as a solo queue you can't guarantee you will get that. So I think maybe being able to leave the game, whether you get 1 round, 2 rounds, whether you somehow win a game, I think being able to leave the game and know, that was a very high outcome when solo queuing, and not letting it get to you is probably the best thing.
Also, try and solo queue with a mate.
Yeah. It does happen. You can get very good solo queue teammates, but it often has to be instigated by someone or something. Like the level of communication or friendly communication that you would need in order to succeed in solo queue is often something that has to be instigated, and that's done with attitude very early on, I think.
Even just something, are you suggesting maybe something like just at the start of the game, just turn on your mic and say, hey guys, how's everyone going? Or say, this round, can we push this way? Or I'm going to play this if someone wants to play the whatever to support it.
Yeah, or even just offering to drone for someone else. Just being supportive in a way that, maybe not a lot of players do. And you'll find yourself making a good teammate out of yourself in that moment.
Might even make some friends so you don't have to keep solo killing.
Yeah,
a bit of lead by example.
Yeah, leading by example is
be the teammate that you want to see in others.
Yeah, exactly.
Now we do have another question. Lunchbox in chat has said how to deal with burnout.
Well, so we're going to deal with those sort of ones in different topics, but if you
can do a little teaser.
Well, if you are burned out, it sort of is associated with feelings that you're underappreciated, that you're doing a lot of effort and not getting a lot of reward out of it, and what you need to do is have a break pretty well. So give yourself a break of some sort and then try and come back from it. If you can get it early enough, then you're able to get back earlier. If you have left it too long, you might need to have a longer break. But yes, it's nasty. And so when I work with teams, I'm looking to see in their scrim schedules that they're managing themselves the right way and they're giving themselves enough breaks. And I think this particular team maybe sometimes might need a bit more break, but you have to do what leads to good performance. And so if you're thinking that more work will lead to better performance and it doesn't, then you need to cut back on the work.
All right. Well, we don't have any more questions at the moment. Have you got more slides to go over, Michelle?
No, that's it. That's the end of my TED talk. So we're coming to the end here. So I want to thank the team very much for joining me. I really appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, no worries. It's been a really interesting talk.
Did it all fall into place?
Yeah, I think so.
Sorry, go Timothy.
Oh, okay. I was just saying, it's very interesting how much overlap there is between various areas. Particularly within the slides that you were pointing out.
Right.
It's quite good. It's one of those areas where you feel that
bits and pieces
that it's true, but you don't explicitly. It's very implicit. It's a very implicit feeling that that these things are true and that they have a major role or play a major factor in your team or in your play, but it's never explicitly stated, and so I think it gives players and people new perspective when it's mentioned in such a formal setting.
Good one. That's a nice summary, Tim. Thanks.
Yeah. Does anyone have any key takeaways? Any things that perhaps surprised them that they might have learned today from some of the slides?
I'm really bad at following diagrams. I think I learned that today.
Oh no! I was hoping you'd follow along. What was the problem?
It was the one where we were talking about
Was it the drop?
It was the catastrophe. No. It was the catastrophe theory. It was
right.
It was just the stuff, and I didn't know where to find, I guess, middle ground in that one. I got all of the edges individually, but it was finding the middle ground of all of them as I couldn't really follow. And I think one big thing that could probably help that I would be interested in, sadly for everybody in the stream, but I mean, going in and being able to use certain examples of our roster and being able to go in and really dissect it with how we play and what we do more in depth as a session.
Right.
Because it's very interesting and it's easy-ish to follow when it's kind of more of a broad spectrum for everyone. I feel like everybody could definitely dive into it more individually and dissect where they sit on it.
My plan working with the team now is that now I know you've got this background, that's when we'll have more in-depth conversations about, hey, did you notice this happening in this scrim? What could you have done differently here? Because you'll have that background now. So that's where I think our talks along those lines will follow.
Yeah.
And plus, you told me you didn't want to go into team stuff, so I didn't mention anything to do with the teams.
True. No. Yeah. Very true. Very true. But,
no team secrets.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely not. We ain't giving anybody those secrets. They're all for us.
But hopefully I've taught a whole lot of people about how this all works and how it fits together. Because it's like different pieces of a jigsaw, I think. But now suddenly you've got a picture and they're all fitting together quite nicely, actually.
Yeah, great. Well, I certainly learnt quite a bit, and I find the diagrams really helpful, even if sometimes it's hard to follow, like you said, Log. But yeah, no, I thought it was great. And Michelle, if you don't have anything else, we might start to tell people where they can watch some of our other stuff. Or have you got anything else you'd like to add?
Like what sort of stuff are you thinking of, James?
I don't know if you have any last tidbits of info that you wanted to throw out there, or you're all set.
No, I think I'm all set. Thank you.
Great. Well, in that case, we actually have 2 other episodes of the podcast, both of which me and Michelle did live at PAX Melbourne earlier this year and at DreamHack Melbourne earlier this year. So if you guys want to watch back those, I know a lot of you, the players, you guys were actually in the audience for the DreamHack one. But if anyone watching wants to go back and check those out, you can find them on our YouTube channel, which is PocketPsych Podcast, or on Spotify, PocketPsych Podcast. And of course, PocketPsych Pod on Twitter is where you'll stay up to date of when we have new shows coming up, new live streams, whatever. And if you just follow the Twitch channel as well, you'll get notifications when we go live. So if you're interested in seeing more, that's where you can do that. As for Michelle, you've actually worked with quite a few different teams. If people want to keep up to date specifically with your stuff, where's the best location to go?
So PocketPsych is where I broadcast how my teams are all going, give their results. So I have quite a number of teams I'm working with at the moment, and you'll see me at PocketPsych on Twitter. James, I don't think we've got the DreamHack one up yet, have we? We've got the PAX one up.
You're right. We haven't actually. I don't think we've got the DreamHack one up. But
no.
The PAX one was one of my favorites. The DreamHack one was really good because we were chatting with Rowan Crothers. But we'll see if we can. I think we had some issues with the footage. Now I remember. We might be able to get that back in an audio format, but we'll have to see that. Otherwise, people should go check out the PAX one because we covered a lot of real fundamentals of esports psychology in that one. But that's all from us here on the show. So thank you everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. And keep your eyes peeled at PocketPsych Pod on Twitter for the next one.
Yeah, if you want to send us a message and tell us what themes you'd like to have us cover, then send us a message on PocketPsych Pod on Twitter, and we'll maybe create a topic around it. Thanks.
Great. Well, until next time, we'll see you guys later. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.